There is a figure who haunts the edges of fairy lore, a queen whose name shifts like mist through the trees. She is called many things across many stories, but one title clings to her like frost, the Queen of Air and Darkness. She rules the cold side of the fairy hill, the shadowed court where beauty walks hand in hand with something sharper. This queen is not always the same woman. She is a shape that many wear, the fairy sovereign of old ballads, the witch in the deep wood, the dream-bringer who rides on night winds. Her face changes with the story, but her nature stays constant. She is the lady of twilight, storms, and the places where human rules no longer quite reach. The phrase itself, Queen of Air and Darkness, comes to us through poetry and Arthurian retelling, not straight from ancient manuscripts. E. Houseman first used it in a haunting poem from 1896, painting her as a figure of ethereal terror. Then T.H. White made it unforgettable in his 1939 novel, The Queen of Air and Darkness, the second book of the Once and Future King, where she becomes a central, tragic force. Yet even if the exact title is modern, the queen it describes has older roots. She echoes through centuries of British and Celtic tales as the ruler of the Unseelie Court, the unblessed fairies, those more likely to lead mortals astray than leave gifts on the windowsill. Where the Seelie queen might reward politeness with gold or luck, her dark sister offers dreams that twist into nightmares, or beauty that fades when the sun rises. In some stories, she is simply the fairy queen, unnamed but unmistakable, a woman of impossible grace riding at the head of a twilight procession, her court glittering like frost on thorns. The Ballad of Tam Lin calls her this, the queen who claims mortals as her tithe to hell and must be outwitted to release her captives. Here she is powerful, jealous, and dangerously capricious, a ruler who does not forgive trespass easily. Other times, she wears the face of a witch or sorceress living deep in the wild woods. White's novel gives her the name Morgause, Arthur's half-sister, a queen whose isolation and dark magic make her both pitiable and terrifying. Morgan Le Fay, her near-twin in Arthurian tales, sometimes takes this role too, Enchantress of Avalon, fairy ruler, and bringer of both healing and ruin. Queen Mab drifts through as well, Shakespeare's tiny dream queen who later grows into something colder in romantic poetry and Victorian fantasy. Originally a midwife of dreams, she becomes in some hands a sovereign of the night air, her chariot made of a hazelnut shell, her power over sleep turning perilous. All these faces, Mab, Morgause, Morgan, the unnamed fairy queen, feed into the same archetype. She is the queen of what does not belong to the sunlit world. Fog, midnight, the sudden silence after a storm, the feeling of being watched from an empty room. Air is her kingdom because it is unseen and everywhere. Darkness is her mantle because it hides what she truly intends. Her court matches her. The Unseelie are the fairies who do not play by human rules of hospitality. They steal children, sour milk, lead travellers into bogs, and whisper through keyholes to unsettle sleep. Yet they are never mindless evil. Their queen teaches them a kind of elegance in their cruelty, a protocol as strict as any royal court. This blending of identities is part of her power. She is not one woman to be fought or bargained with, but a title passed from one dark sovereign to the next, like a crown made of shadow. In Welsh lore, she might brush against figures like the wives of Anun. In Irish tales, she echoes the Seelie queens who guard the western doors. Even in modern fantasy, her shape endures. Role-playing games cast her as the archfey ruler of the Unseelie, a sister to the Seelie's Titania, her throne a black diamond heart in a realm of endless winter. She remains what she has always been, the fairy queen you hope never notices you, whose gifts come wrapped in conditions you cannot read until too late. In the next part of this story, her court comes into clearer view. The processions, the raids, the way she and her kind test mortals with beauty too sharp to touch. If the Queen of Air and Darkness is a shape rather than a single face, then her court gives her substance. In the shadowed half of fairy lore, she rides at the head of processions that are equal parts splendor and terror. These are the Unseelie raids, twilight or midnight cavalcades where the dark fairies show themselves not to bless, but to remind mortals of their place. The Unseelie Court gathers those fairies who do not trouble themselves with human notions of kindness. They are the ones described as wicked wights, the host of the unforgiven dead, the spirits who steal unbaptized children or lead travellers into bogs for sport. Where the Seelie might leave milk repaid with cream, the Unseelie leave milk soured and cream turned to dust. Yet even here, the Queen's presence imposes a kind of order. Her court is aristocratic, bound by rules as strict as any human royalty, though the punishments for breaking them are swifter and stranger. She is often unnamed in the oldest tales, simply the Queen or the Fairy Queen, her authority so absolute that no family name is needed. One of the clearest glimpses comes from the ballad of Tam Lin. Here the Fairy Queen rules a court that rides out every 7 years on Halloween to pay a tithe to Hell, one of their own, the most beautiful knight in her company. Tam Lin fears he will be that sacrifice, stolen years before as a mortal, and now too lovely to escape her notice. His lover Janet rescues him through courage and quick thinking, pulling him from his white horse amid the thundering procession and holding fast through a series of magical transformations. The Queen's rage is palpable, but her own laws bind her. A bargain made cannot be unmade, and a night won by ordeal belongs to the victor. This Queen is powerful, jealous, and unyielding, her Halloween ride a perfect Unseelie raid, glorious, perilous, and tied to the turning of the dark year. Scottish lore gives us more of these processions. The Unseelie ride out across the land, sometimes called the Silly Wictus, or Wicked Wights, their queen a carline or witch-like figure at their head. They appear at night, when their power is strongest, trotting in troops on stems of plants or dry stalks as makeshift mounts. These raids are not random. Like earthly nobility, fairy queens ride for ceremony, hunting, or war, displaying their court's splendor while testing the world beneath them. To cross their path uninvited is to risk being swept into the ride itself, waking days or years later with no memory of the time lost. Queen Mab drifts through some of these tales as well, though her nature shifts over time. Shakespeare's Mab is a tiny dream midwife, driving a chariot of hazelnut over sleepers' minds. Later poets and storytellers make her grander, colder, a night queen whose dreams can curdle into prophecy or madness. In Irish tradition, she brushes against the queens of the Seelie, the high fairies who rule the western mounds and hills. One tale names Una as the last high queen of the Deo and Seelie, wife to the fairy king Finvara, her court a place of music and danger. These are not always Unseelie by strict definition, but they share the same shadowed elegance, beauty that demands caution, gifts that come with strings. The Unseelie Queen's court is never chaotic. Even her malice has protocol. Insult her directly, and the punishment is precise. Elf shot for cattle, changelings for children, endless wandering for the rude. Flatter her indirectly, and she might pass by with nothing worse than a chill down the spine. Her processions mark the liminal hours, twilight fading to night, Samhain when the dead walk free, the dark moons when human sight fails. They are displays of power, reminders that the fairy hill has 2 doors, one warm and one cold, and that not every hand extended from the bright side belongs to a friend. In the next part of a story, these queens step from ballad and raid into Arthurian shadow. Morgause with her darkwood throne, Morgan weaving spells from Avalon, faces that wear the same crown of air and night. As the hollow winds of Celtic night fade into legend, a deeper chill settles over the golden halls of Camelot, where the queen of air and darkness slips through the veils of Arthurian shadow like frost upon a blade. No longer bound to fairy wraths or Unseelie hosts, she dons the guise of mortal queens. Morgause, the Orkney sorceress whose icy castle broods over northern seas, and her sister or echo, Morgan le Fay, enchantress of mist-shrouded Avalon, both daughters of Igraine, half-sisters to Arthur himself, their blood mingling fairy malice with royal ambition. In these tales, woven from medieval chronicles like the Vulgate cycle and Mallory's Le Morte d'Arthur, the Unseelie essence finds new form, twisting chivalry's bright promise into threads of doom and desire, where fairy queens become flesh to sow discord from within. Listen to Morgause's shadow first, that northern queen widowed by war, mother to Gwaun, Argravain, Gaheris, and Gareth, knights of the Round Table bred in her chill embrace, yet fierce with hidden hate toward their uncle king. Unknowing Arthur visits her court amid rebellion's smoke in Lothian-shadowed halls, and in the hush of peace talks, she draws him into her bed with subtle gramarye, conceiving Mordred, the fracture in Camelot's heart, a son whose birth seals the king's fate, whispered in Ditch White's the queen of air and darkness as the cornerstone of tragedy. Her Orkney brood grows twisted, Gwaun loyal yet vengeful, Argravain scheming, Gaheris and Gareth caught in blood feuds that splinter the table's oaths, all nursed on her unspoken spite like wolves at a frozen teat. Phonetic echoes bind her to the Unseelie. Her name whispers through Orkney mists like seal wictus on the wind, her spells echoing Gwyn ap Nuth's dark consort, bridging fairy courts to Arthur's throne with threads of incest and ice. Morgan le Fay rises beside her, or merges in older yarns where boundaries blur between sisters and shades. Ruler of Avalon, stealer of Excalibur's scabbard to strip Arthur bare, binder of knights like Lancelot in her Vale of No Return, where lovers forget oaths amid enchanted bliss. Her raven glamours kin to the Morrigan, phantom queen of war and fate who washes warriors' armour in blood rivers and shrieks over battlefields, her form shifting from crone to maiden as the tide of slaughter turns. In Cratine's romances and the post-Vulgate cycle, she learns dark arts from Merlin, plots with Accolon to claim Arthur's crown in a duel of stolen blades, hurls the protective sheath into deep waters so no magic shields the king at Camlan's doom. Benevolent healer in Geoffrey's Vita Merlini, lulling wounds with herbs and song, she turns vengeful foe, spiriting wounded Arthur to Avalon not in mercy alone, but to weave his endless slumber amid black-hooded fae, holding Camelot's dream captive in mist. Even in these mortal guises, Unseelie protocol lingers. Morgause receives Arthur with feast and firelight, her hospitality a velvet trap. Morgan le Fay tempts with gifts that curdle, scabbards that fail, lovers ensnared, prophecies whispered in sleep. Their courts mirror the raid. Orkney's halls echo with hunts for unicorn shades. Avalon's groves hum with spells that bend time, both testing knights who wander too near, leaving them hollow or broken. Mallory paints them as one force at times, Arthur's sisters plotting from shadows, their fairy blood clashing with Christian steel, iron oaths that blind them to the old ways. Modern retellings etch their shadows deeper still, crystallizing the queen's fluidity into lasting dread. White's novel crowns Morgause the true queen of air and darkness, witch-mother raising Orkney sons in loveless spite, seducing Arthur through gramarye disguised as desire. Her unicorn hunts and brutal lessons a parable of might twisted from right, where boys learn power as pain. Marion Zimmer Bradley's Mists of Avalon casts Morgan as priestess turned rival, her fairy sight piercing Camelot's false light, weaving vengeance from Avalon's sacred groves against the cross's encroaching fire. Echoes persist in games and tales. D&D's Raven Queen as necrotic winter sovereign, her form a direct heir to this airy terror, hoarding secrets in shadowed domains. These visions reveal no single face, but shifting peril. From Morrigan's cries to Morgause's bedchamber guile, the darkness infiltrates Arthur's dream, frost kissing the Round Table's oaths until they shatter like thin ice. Yet as Camelot's spires crack under this veiled assault, her essence hardens further, into the crystallized myths of our own shadowed age, where housemen, white, and beyond fix her gaze upon us still. Camelot's ruins fade into the hush of printed pages and glowing screens, where the queen of air and darkness takes final form, not as fleeting shadow, but as crystallized sovereign of our shadowed tales. Here, in the 20th century's ink and imagination, poets and novelists bind her fluid terror into names that endure. Lawrence Houseman's ghostly queen, Titch White's witch-mother of ice, and the gaming realms where she reigns eternal as necrotic dread. These modern myths do not invent her, but distill the Unseelie essence from Celtic mist into figures mortals can name, fear, and face in stories that whisper through sleepless nights. Lawrence Houseman glimpses her first in ghostly elegance, his 1905 collection The House of Air and Darkness painting the Unseelie Queen as a spectral beauty gliding through haunted manors, her court a procession of pallid shades that lure the living into eternal twilight. His tales blend Victorian ghostliness with fairy chill. She appears as a veiled lady whose touch chills blood, her raid now a silent waltz through moonlit gardens, stealing breaths rather than souls, yet bound by the same aristocratic code. No malice without ceremony. Houseman's Queen echoes Tam Lin's ballad sovereign, jealous and precise. Her modern hauntings a bridge from medieval ballad to Edwardian dread, where Unseelie protocol meets gaslit shadows. T.H. White cements her most vividly in The Queen of Air and Darkness, the second book of the once and future king, transforming Morgause from mere seductress into the Unseelie heart itself, ruler of a frozen Orkney castle, nursing her sons on loveless lessons in power's cruelty. Here she hunts unicorns with baying hounds, her gramarye twisting innocence into hate. Gawain learns loyalty through pain. Agravain schemes in silence. Mordred emerges as her perfect fracture, conceived in unwitting sin with Arthur during a rebel's truce. White's prose lingers on her chill beauty, her education a parable of nature warped by might, where the queen's airy darkness poisons Camelot from afar. No spells needed, just the slow frost of family spite. Phonetic whispers persist. Her name a hiss on northern winds, her throne a wrath of ice echoing Gwyn ap Nuth's Unseelie halls. This crystallization peaks in gaming's shadow domains, where Dungeons and Dragons forges her into the Raven Queen, goddess of death, fate, and winter's silence, her form a direct heir to airy malice, hoarding secrets in the Shadowfell's gloom. Born from White's influence and Celtic echoes, she rules necrotic courts where undead serve and memories fade, her exarchs like the Lady of Pain patrolling liminal planes, punishing hubris with eternal chill. Modern RPGs and novels amplify her. In critical role campaigns, she demands tithes of memory. In Baldur's Gate, her cultists weave prophecies from Raven's cries, blending Houseman's ghosts with White's tragedy into playable peril. Even urban fantasy nods her way. Dresden Files' Unseelie mothers, World of Darkness spectral queens, figures whose bargains curdle like soured cream, their processions now through neon nights. These modern veils reveal her timeless truth. No fixed face, but eternal shift, from Houseman's veiled spectre to White's Orkney witch, D&D's necrotic crown. Always aristocratic, always perilous, her court a reminder that air carries both song and frost. The raid endures in code and story, Unseelie order imposed on chaos, inviting us to wander too close at our peril. And so her tale circles back to the hollows where it began. But for now, breathe deep in this crystallized dark, letting Camelot's chill fade into dream. In the peat bogs of old Nithsdale, where fairy raids thunder on Samhain winds, a shepherd named Tam tends his flock under a moon as thin as a sickle. The night grows heavy with hoofbeats that shake the earth but leave no mark, laughter sharp as thorns cutting through the mist. An Unseelie procession led by her, the Queen of Air and Darkness, her form a veiled chill atop a steed of woven shadows. Tam knows the law. Seal Victus ride without mercy, sweeping up those who meet their gaze, but the obedient may pass unseen if they lie flat as the grave moss, eyes sealed against her airy gaze. The cavalcade draws near, horses of dry thistle-stalks pounding past inches from his face, their riders' cloaks whispering frost across his skin, pale shades with eyes like winter stars, carlines cackling of tithes to hell, knights whose armor gleams sickly green. The queen glides at their head, her voice a melody that tugs at his soul like frost needles, bidding mortals rise and join the eternal raid through Elfame's cold doors. One rider leans close, breath icing his ear. Look upon her splendor white, and taste the court's dark wine. Tam's heart hammers, fingers digging into bog earth, but he remembers the old warning. Good Victus demand no glance, Unseelie none at all, and stays stone still, breath shallow as a sleeper's. The host thunders on, wheels of invisible chariots grazing his wool, her laughter freezing dew on his lashes, yet no hand claims him. Dawn breaks pale, sheep unharmed, the trodden grass rising whole as if no hoof ever fell. Tam stumbles home, voice hoarse from unsaid prayers, his flock richer in milk that sours not. The lesson endures in hollow winds. Before her raid, lie flat and sightless. Obedience cloaks you from the Queen of Air and Darkness, for Unseelie Court's honor protocol above all. Even malice bends to the one who yields without a glance. In the shadowed glens of old Perthshire, where the river Tay whispers secrets to the frost-rimed oaks. A weaver named Elspeth works her loom by peat-fire glow on a night when the moon hangs low and bloated, heavy with unseelie portent. Her hands, calloused from shuttle and warp, weave a plaid for her brother's wedding, threads of russet wool dyed with heather and bloodroot, patterns echoing ancient knots that ward against the seal wictus. But as midnight tolls from the distant kirk, the air thickens with a chill that seeps through stone walls, carrying the faint thunder of hooves on windless air and laughter sharp as shattered ice. A raid approaches, led by none other than her, the queen of air and darkness, gliding on steeds of twisted briar and shadow. Elspeth feels it first in her bones, a pull like frost needles pricking her spine, the fire dimming to embers that hiss and spit without fuel. The door, barred with iron nails and rowan cross, rattles softly. No gale, just a courtesy knock from beyond the veil, as unseelie protocol demands before a bargain is struck. She knows the tales from her grand's knee. The queen rides not to steal blindly, but to offer choices laced with peril, her gifts always double-edged, demanding true names or oaths that bind the soul through Elfame's cold halls. Heart steady as her loom's rhythm, Elspeth rises, unbars the door with trembling fingers, and steps into the dooryard where mist coils like living smoke, revealing the cavalcade halted in perfect stillness. Pale knights with eyes like winter pools, carlines crooning forgotten dirges, and at their heart the queen herself. She is beauty carved from night, tall and slender, cloaked in gossamer woven from spider silk and raven feathers that shift like oil on water, her skin luminous as moonlit snow, hair a cascade of midnight threaded with frost stars. Her eyes, vast and violet as storm-bruised skies, fix on Elspeth with a gaze that strips the soul bare, seeing every want, every hidden grief, the brother's fever wasting him Obed, the barren womb that mocks her craft, the loom's endless toil for scraps. The queen dismounts with grace that mocks gravity, her bare feet leaving frost flowers on the dewless grass, and speaks in a voice like wind through hollow reeds, melodic yet laced with winter's bite. Weaver of mortal dreams, your threads mimic our glamours, yet lack true power. Name your want, and I shall weave it real, for a price befitting my court. Elspeth's breath clouds the air, her mind racing through Gran's warnings. Unseelie bargains twist on words, promises fulfilled in cruel jests, but refusal risks the raid's full wrath. Elf-shot for kin, blights on loom and field. She thinks of her brother Tomos, coughing blood into rags, his wedding a hollow rite without breath to vow, of her empty hearth, nights spent tracing patterns alone while neighbours birth heirs. Steeling herself, she meets the violet gaze. Protocol allows the bold, and speaks true. My lady of air and night, heal my brother and grant me a child of my blood, strong and fair. In trade, I offer 7 years' service at your court, my hands to weave your veils. The queen's lips curve in a smile that chills deeper than any frost, her fingers, long and alabaster, tipped with nails like obsidian, brushing Elspeth's cheek, leaving a trail of ice that burns sweet as honeyed mead. A fine weave, the queen murmurs, her breath scenting of night-blooming thorns and distant snow. But know my court's truth. 7 years mortal counted are 7 lifetimes in Elfame, where time dilates like warps stretched taut. Your brother wakes hale at dawn, your womb quickens by Beltane moon. Come Samhain next, seek the cairn by Tay's bend, speak my name thrice, Gwanheva, and the seal wictus claim their due. She extends a hand, palm upturned, revealing a spool of thread finer than spider-gut, shimmering black silver, humming with captive starlight. Elspeth hesitates, glimpsing the raid's truth in its gleam. Knights whose faces blur between youth and bone, carlines with eyes sewn shut yet weeping pearl tears, horses champing moss that writhes like worms. Gran's voice echoes, never take what Fae offer unasked, for their yes hides 1,000 no's. But Tomos's gasps haunt her dreams, and the empty cradle mocks louder still. With a nod that tastes of ash, Elspeth takes the spool, its touch flooding her veins with cold fire. Visions cascade, Tomos rising ruddy-cheeked, laughing at his wedding feast, a babe in her arms, dark-haired and fierce-eyed, weaving first clumsy plaids by firelight. The queen laughs, a sound like crystal cracking under pressure, and mounts her briar steed, the raid stirring to life with a sigh of wind through barrows. Protocol binds us. Weaver, fail to appear, and your gifts curdle, brother to dust, child to changeling shade. Appear true, and weave eternal in my halls. The cavalcade wheels away, fading into mist without hoofbeat or cry, leaving Elspeth clutching the spool, its hum a lullaby laced with dread. Dawn gilds the glen, Tomas stirs whole and hungry, shouting for porridge. By spring's thaw, Elspeth's belly swells with life, the village whispering of miracles. She weaves wonders now, cloaks that turn rain to silk, plaids that warm through blizzard, but each night the spool whispers, counting threads to Samhain's eve. Neighbours envy her fortune, blind to the frost filming her window-panes, the dreams of endless looms in airy halls where time frays souls to gossamer. The lesson weaves through every bargain. The queen of air and darkness offers choices sharp as shears, fulfilling wants with threads of doom. Weigh your yes against Elfhame's dilation, for Unseelie protocol honours the deal exact. Gifts bloom bright, but their roots drink deep from the heart. On the blood-soaked fields of Camlan, where Arthurian steel clashes under a sky bruised purple with twilight's dying light, a knight named Bedivere lies wounded amid the trampled heather, his sword-arm shattered, life leaking warm and slow from a dozen gashes rent by Mordred's Orkney blades. The battle's roar fades to moans and ravens' cries, Camelot's dream fracturing like ice under war's weight, but as shadows lengthen into the hollow dark, a mist rolls from the western sea, thick as cream, scented with apple blossom and decay, carrying whispers of Unseelie protocol from beyond the veil. Bedivere, once merry at the round table, now gasps prayers to saints who heed not fairy chill, unaware the queen of air and darkness approaches not as foe, but sole guide through death's liminal ford, her Arthurian shades bridging mortal end to Avalon's endless slumber. The mist coils closer, parting like raven wings to reveal her form. Morgan le Fay, tall and ethereal in gossamer woven from storm clouds and spider veils, her raven hair unbound like midnight rivers, eyes violet as Morrigan's war-fate gaze, skin pale as frost-rimed marble glowing faint against the carnage. She glides without touch of earth, bare feet trailing frost flowers that wither heather to ash, her presence a chill that numbs pain yet stirs the soul's deep hunger for what lies beyond. Echoes of Nicnavin's Giacarling rite, psychopomp queen who shepherds the unforgiven through Elfhame's cold doors, kin to Gwyn ap Nuth's Unseelie host gathering battlefield shades. Bedivere's vision blurs, fever dreams of feasts and quests mingling with a scent of night thorn and sea salt, her voice a lullaby laced with winter's edge. Loyal blade of the once king, your oaths bleed out with your blood. Yield to the crossing, or cling to this shattered field. Protocol bids you choose, as all souls must before my airy veil. He clutches Excalibur's hilt, Arthur's last command echoing faint. Return the blade to the lake, then follow where fate leads. Yet strength fails, limbs heavy as bog iron. Morgan kneels beside him, her touch featherlight on his brow, flooding veins with icy clarity. Visions cascade of Avalon's misted shores, apple groves where time dilates eternal, black-hooded fae chanting dirges that heal or unmake. The king sails west, she murmurs, fingers tracing runes that glow silver blue, sealing wounds not to save but to ferry. Protocol of the soul guide, neither mercy nor malice, but passage paid in truth yielded. Bedivere whispers his confession, fealty sworn to Arthur, yet heart tempted by Guinevere's glance, oaths broken in shadow brawls with Orkney kin, the table's ideals cracked by his own ambition's frost. Her smile chills deeper than any wound, approving the Unseelie right. No lies cross her ford, for airy darkness strips souls bare as a raid strips the bold. The mist thickens, wrapping them in a cocoon of whispering winds, her carline attendants emerging, pale shades of fallen knights, eyes sown with raven feathers yet weeping pearl tears of memory, steeds of woven mist champing apple moss that writhes like souls unbound. She lifts him effortless as thistledown, cradling against her raven cloak that warms like deceitful fire, and they drift from Camlan's slaughter toward the lake's glassy mirror, where Excalibur gleams half-sheathed in his grasp. Cast it true, she bids, voice echoing through hollow reeds, and Bedivere hurls the blade Arch-King into waters that part like veils, a mailed hand rising thrice to catch it. Lady of the Lake, her sister shade in this Unseelie trinity. The waters close with a sigh, mist-boat materializing from fog, rowed by hooded figures whose oars dip silent. bearing them west over starless sea toward Avalon's Tor, where apple boughs droop heavy with fruit that drips dream dew. En route, Morgan reveals the crossing's truth. Avalon not paradise nor hell, but liminal wrath where Arthur slumbers under her watch, wounds knit slow as time's dilation, awaiting the horn that wakes kings from fairy sleep. Bedivere glimpses the king on a bier of crystal and thorn, tended by priestesses whose faces shift. Morgause's icy spite, her own vengeful grace, Orkney shadows guarding Camelot's echo. You join the vigil, she intones, her breath frosting his lashes, not as night, but shade in my court, oaths eternal, no return till the veil thins anew. Terror and peace war within him. The round table's firelight fades, replaced by endless gloaming where souls weave glamours from regret, carlines teaching dirges that bind fate, knights sparring with blades of ice that wound without death. Protocol binds even the dead. Speak no Christian prayers here, for iron crosses curdle the mist. Yield names true, or wander as will-o-wisp forever. They beach on silver sands, Avalon's Tor looming through perpetual dusk, its paths twisting like labyrinthine roots into hollow hills where Unseelie feasts echo, wine that forgets woe, music that dilates hours to ages. Morgan sets him down at the Tor's gate, her form dissolving to raven shadows wheeling overhead, voice lingering like frost on breath. Rest in my darkness, Bedivere. The king wakes when Camelot calls. Your vigil pays the tithe. He stumbles inward, pain gone but soul heavier with airy truth, joining shades who gnawed in silent welcome, their eyes violet as hers. Back in mortal ken, bards sing Bedivere drowned or vanished, Excalibur lost, Arthur borne by queens to healing isle, yet whispers persist in Welsh hollows of the soul guide's grace, her Arthurian veil parting for the loyal. Dawn never breaks full on Camlan's survivors, but in dreams they glimpse mist boats ferrying kings to Unseelie rest. The lesson haunts every battlefield's hush. The Queen of Air and Darkness guides souls not with hellfire or harp, but cold protocol through death's ford. Yield truth at her touch, embrace the vigil's chill, for she ferries without favour. Arthurian shade or shepherd's white, all cross her airy veil to Elfame's eternal gloaming. There is a stretch of road in the highlands that the sat-navs do not trust. A single carriage ribbon of tarmac threading between heather hills and black lochs, with no signal bars, no houses, and a wind that tastes faintly of iron and old rain. Locals say it runs close to the ferry paths, those invisible tracks the good neighbours walk when they cross from mound to world, and that on some nights the human road and the Unseelie road slide over one another like thin sheets of glass. On such a night, a woman named Mara is driving home from a late shift, the dashboard clock blinking 2:13 a.m. in tired green light. The world outside her windscreen is reduced to twin cones of headlamps, and the white dash line ticking beneath her wheels like a slow heartbeat. The radio has fallen to a hiss of static. No stations here, and her phone, abandoned on the passenger seat, shows no service in cold letters. It is just her, the engine's dull hum, and the sense of being watched by the darkness pressing in on every side. She tells herself it is only exhaustion, only the long day and too much coffee, but the air in the car feels different as she crests a low rise. Thicker, quieter, the kind of hush churches gather at midnight, or forests after snowfall. A bank of mist pours suddenly across the road ahead, thick, low, and white, lit silver in her beams. Not the usual highland hard drifting off the loch, but a wall, smooth as if painted there, and behind it the faint suggestion of movement, shapes pacing just out of sight. Her hands tighten on the wheel. Every story her grandmother ever told her about not driving this way on Halloween, about the Sluagh, the Unseelie host that flies at night, comes back all at once. She remembers, too, the gentler warnings that were not gentle at all. If you feel the road change, if you sense the eyes of something not quite human on you, do not stop, do not speak, and above all, do not look too long. The fair folk love a gaze. They hook it like a fish. Mara should turn back. She knows this. The sensible thing would be to reverse to the last lay-by, to wait until dawn. Yet the fuel gauge hovers low, and the thought of idling in the dark with that feeling of being watched is somehow worse. She eases her foot down very gently, and the car rolls into the mist. The temperature drops at once. Her breath ghosts out in front of her. The heater continues to blow, but the warmth is gone, leached away as if the air outside is drinking it. Sound changes, too. Tires that should crunch on gravel now seem to roll over something softer, muffled, as though the tarmac is carpeted in moss or old leaves. The engine, steady seconds ago, becomes distant, like a recording played in another room. She watches the road. She is very careful to watch only the road. The white line is ghostly under her beams, but it is still there, and as long as it is there, she thinks she is still in her own world. The mist shifts, thickening on one side, thinning on the other, and for a moment she sees something beyond the verge. There is a procession in the field to her left, walking exactly parallel to her car. Figures, tall and slim, draped in fabrics that hang and shimmer like water, their colors impossible to name in headlamp-washed gray. Some ride on things that are not quite horses, too long in the leg, too narrow in the face, hooves not quite touching the ground. Others walk barefoot, and every step they take leaves a brief print of frost on the grass before the mist folds over it. They carry no lanterns, yet a dim, sourceless light clings to them, outlining faces that are too smooth, too still. Eyes that catch and return the beams like an animal's, but with a mind behind them far older than anything that walks on two human legs. At their head rides the tallest of them all. Her cloak is the color of the sky before a storm, shot through with points of cold silver that move like distant stars. Her hair, black as raven wing, streams behind her as if in a wind Mara cannot feel, and on her brow lies no crown, but a circlet of thorns dipped in ice. Where she passes, the mist thickens, then thins again, as if afraid to cling to her. Mara does not need anyone to tell her who this is. Every ballad and book she ever half-read about the Queen of Air and Darkness rises at once like breath in cold lungs. Unseelie sovereign. Winters will walking. The one whose court rides not for blessing, but for reminder. The Queen turns her head, very slowly, toward the car. Mara feels the movement more than sees it, like the turning of a tide. She knows in the way the body knows heat and cold, that there is an invitation in that tilt, a hook in that almost glance. Just a look, the air whispers. Just one look. See what walks beside you. See who shares your road. Her grandmother's voice rides up through the years, stronger than the hiss of the vents. On a night when the road runs thin and you feel them draw alongside, you do not meet their eye. You keep your gaze on your own line. You belong to the road you look at. Mara locks her eyes on the dash line. It ticks under her like a metronome. She can feel the Queen's regard skimming across the metal skin of the car, tasting the paint, the steel, the glass, like fingertips on the outside of a coffin. The shapes in the mist keep pace. One figure, a smaller one, child-tall, its hand swallowed by the Queen's cloak, turns its head fully, pressing its face against the barrier of fog beside her window. In the corner of her vision, Mara catches an impression of pale features and eyes that are not a child's at all, depthless and hungry. The urge to glance over, to confirm, is a physical ache, like needing to scratch. The radio crackles. Through the static, for a moment, she hears music. Fiddles and pipes playing a reel she half recognizes from a pub in Skye. Laughter follows, soft and overlapping, threaded with something like weeping. Then voices, too many layered to separate, all speaking different words that nonetheless land in her mind as meaning. You are tired. Pull over. Rest a while. Come see our lights. Time enough to drive in the morning. She does not answer. You do not answer when something on a liminal road speaks first. Her hands stay at 10 and 2. Her foot stays steady. The white line continues, though the mist now swallows the verge entirely. She cannot see sky or field, only the tunnel of her beams and the hint of movement keeping pace at the edge of sight. And then, abruptly, the road bends. She does not remember it bending there before, on all the nights she has driven this way. It is a slow, careful curve, leading not down toward the familiar bridge, but up, toward a darker, thicker patch of fog that pulses faintly with colors. Not neon, not anything of human making, but greens and blues like deep water, broken by brief flashes of impossible violet. The procession begins to angle toward that curve. So does her car. For a heartbeat, the steering wheel feels loose in her hands, as if turned by a will not her own. The dash line veers in front of her bonnet, inviting her off the mapped route and onto something older, a road that is not on any screen. The music grows louder, and with it a strange, deep comfort. What if a small voice in her whispers, "You just follow it"? What if you stop fighting the pull and let the car drift up there, into the mist where the colors are? Maybe, on the other side, there is a place without fluorescent lights and tired eyes and accounts to reconcile. Maybe there is a hall of stone and air where time does not bite so hard. Her phone vibrates on the passenger seat. Just once. A single, stubborn shiver of mortal signal finds her, enough to light the screen for a moment. She does not look fully. She does not dare break her gaze from the line, but she sees, in the edge of her vision, the name that flashes up. Her sister. A person who will notice if she does not come home. A name that belongs wholly to this side of the mist. Mara thinks of her sister's laugh, of half-made plans to visit the ferry pools in summer, of washing dishes and arguing over nothing in a kitchen that smells of toast and cheap coffee. The music outside shifts. For an instant, it falters, as if something in the pattern has snagged. She seizes that breath of hesitation like a lifeline, tightens her grip, and gently, stubbornly, turns the wheel back toward where the bend should be in her memory. It is like steering against a current. The car resists, tires humming unhappily. The procession beside her slows. In the far corner of her sight, the Queen lifts a hand, fingers long and pale, each tipped with a gleam of cold light. The mist seems to lean in, pressing against the glass. Her ears pop as if she is changing altitude. Then, with a soft, almost disappointed sigh, the resistance breaks. The road snaps back to the route she knows. A real bend appears, signposted and mundane, and beyond it she sees the low stone of the bridge and the familiar glimmer of the lock. The mist rolls backward like a wave, peeling off the verges, thinning, then shredding into tatters that vanish in the night breeze. In her mirrors, there is nothing but empty tarmac and a faint trail of exhaust. The music is gone. The radio returns to ordinary static. The air in the car warms by degrees. Her dashboard clock reads 2:16 a.m. Only 3 minutes have passed since she first saw the mist. Her hands, however, are shaking as if held to ice for an hour. At home, later, she will notice that her fuel gauge has barely moved at all for the distance covered. Outside, in the wider world, she will learn that a power cut blinked the clocks in town at exactly 3:03 a.m., and that the bartender who served her hours before swears the rain hammered the pub windows at that time like a sudden storm, though Mara drove in dry, clear weather. That night, when she parks at last on her quiet street, there is a smear of grey on the side of her car that no sponge can quite scrub away. Not dirt, not salt, but something that catches the light as if it remembers another sky. For weeks, when she closes her eyes, she sees the suggestion of a tall rider at the edge of fog, head turning slowly toward her, and feels again the ache in her neck where curiosity wanted to pull. She knows, with the same wordless certainty that told her what walked beside her, that if she had taken that other bend, followed that other white line, the clock on her dashboard would have told a different story when she arrived, if she arrived at all. The lesson stays with her, and with anyone who hears it in the small hours. Some roads are not just roads. When the mist comes in a wall, and the air goes thin and old, when music you cannot quite place asks you to turn, Remember the Queen of Air and Darkness walks modern tarmac as easily as mossy paths. She still tests the waking with offers of elsewhere. Keep your eyes on your own line, your hands on your own wheel, and let the unseelie raid pass by unseen. Time belongs to the world you choose to look at.